This talk is about Instagram as an art medium, as opposed to a way to promote art events and art itself. I'd like to introduce Klaus and Biesenbach from MoMA, Simone de Pury, the Auctioneer, you may already know, Hans-Ulrich Oberst from the Serpentine, Kevin Stystrom, the CEO and co-founder of Instagram. We also have Amalia Ulman, an artist from Los Angeles. And then moderating is Bettina Korek, also from LA, from an organization called ForYourArt. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Bettina. Thank you to the Art Fair for organizing this and bringing it all together. So I was emailing with the artist David Robbins about this panel, and he sent me a line that I think embodies the huge shift in culture that Instagram is really a vanguard of. He said, "A picture is worth 1,000 words. An algorithm is worth 1 billion pictures." David wrote an essay that I love called High Entertainment, where he talks about how content has been produced on the poles of accessibility and refinement. And he introduces the idea of the independent imagination. And as the powers and tools of production and distribution of media are spread, he talks about the emergence of a third pole, high entertainment. And I think it's interesting to talk about and think about Instagram in these terms. Over the summer, Hans Ulrich, together with Kevin McGarry, and I organized an Instagram mini marathon where we invited artists to talk about how they use the medium as a sketchbook, as an archive, as entertainment, as a personal branding tool, and even as an addiction. The nuances of this simple and powerful tool for communication, I think, really reflect its potential in that of social media as a public space. It's an honor to be here today with all of you. I think you need no introduction. With Kevin here, we'll have the opportunity to learn more about Instagram from the inside and learn more about how it evolved as a platform and a tool. Our other panelists, for Amalia, the medium is really a medium for performance. And our other panelists, who are not artists, reflect the ways that anyone can use Instagram as an artistic medium or platform in general. To start off, Amalia is going to talk to you about the performance that took place on her Instagram over the last 4 months. She really tested the limits of fiction and destroyed her own online persona to present this conceptual artwork. Now, Klaus, Hans-Ulrich, and Simone share very little information about themselves and their personal lives, and so after that, they're going to show you how they're using Instagram, and then we'll go from there. So thank you. Amalia?
Okay, as soon as the video starts.
We need the video.
Great. Hello, my name is Amalia Ulman and I'm an artist. In my practice, I observe social discrimination, class divide, and power structures. You treat her better because of her beauty and her money and her trust fund. That sort of behavior, preferential treatment, VIP area, bonus points, executive club. I previously focused this type of research around objects, the life of ugly objects, the stories emitted in Chinese imports, and how cities can be experienced through consumerism. The comfort of seeing the same wavy willow in some ghetto hair salon in my hometown, and at the lobby of some 5-star hotel. But what about our bodies? Bodies can crumble, perish, disappoint us, promote us. Bodies represent who we are, what our history is, where do we come from. We can't escape our bodies. Bodies are suitcases for our consciousness, but who's this suitcase by? What label? Which designer? It could be a Mulberry, or a Kelly, or a Vuitton, or a Vans backpack, or a Tesco plastic bag, or a Zara tote. Bodies sometimes say too much, but bodies can also deceive, confuse us, disappoint us, misguide us. We can also manipulate our bodies and our appearances, mostly through one single strategy: money. Excellences and Perfections is a project about our flesh as object, your body as an investment. How do we market this flesh? How do we price this meat? And how long will it stay fresh for? Meet me at the butcher's. Last year, in December 2013, I was invited to participate in a talk on self-branding. The term nauseated me, although what kind of person would you have to be to believe that your own Facebook presence was authentic, that it truly captured who you really are? No filter. I was unintentionally performing the stereotype of the artsy brunette, of the poor female artist that had moved from a provincial town to the big city, the eager learner who requires to be saved by the male director of some museum or some school of fine arts. So, if credibility was an asset and a tedium of Facebook posts overshadow works of art in themselves, I'd have to boycott myself to undermine the capitalist undertone of my online presence. Let the trolls in. Even when you show it all, you reveal very little. The project would consist of a 4-month-long performance, a full immersion in screen reality. I terrorized the rhythm of my online presence narrative to prove how easy it is to manipulate an audience through images. My online representation didn't represent me anymore. Since May, I'd follow a script, and all my posts would be 100% fabricated. Inspired by all those Korean girls whose Instagram I check every morning and whose life plus I get through their daily selfies, I wrote a story in pictures. The strategy was simple. I'd start with an aesthetic that was slightly close to my own taste, to therefore appropriate the most popular girl trends on Instagram. For the first episode, I'd go for cute, pink, grunge, blonde, LA, Tumblr girl, the indie girl who has only read J.D. Salinger, the American Apparel model, pastel colors, pink nipples and rabbits, cats, pale models, kawaii violence, flowers, bondage, bruises. Only after 1 week of posting images in my new persona, the likes went up. Very soon, I started receiving messages from men who wanted to shoot me, the very phallic camera lens. Even received an email from a professional photographer in the line of Urban Outfitters, because girls want to get their picture taken, for free, of course. The sadder the girl, the happier the troll. My main inspiration for self-destructive process was Amanda Bynes. Trolls scourge on her disgrace. The sadder she is, the happier is the troll. And that's what I wanted for myself. I wanted the audience to feel uncomfortable after desiring something that was inherently wrong, wishing others failure. But how would I make it all credible? People tend to believe whatever they've been programmed to believe. The audience easily generated the wrong narrative and conclusions after a series of proposed images and matched those in the mental archive of mainstream archetypes. The idea was to play with the notion of deception online, and my strategy was to rely on narratives seen before, so people could map the content of the photographs with ease, generating the narrative I had scripted and reacting just as I wanted to. Money, boredom, MLS, addiction, self-esteem, surgery. The provincial girl moves to the big city, wants to be a model, wants money, splits up with her high school boyfriend, wants to change her lifestyle, enjoys singledom, runs out of money because she doesn't have a job, because she's still self-absorbed in her narcissism. She starts going on seeking arrangement dates, gets a sugar daddy, gets depressed, starts doing more drugs, gets a boob job because her sugar daddy makes her feel insecure about her body, and he also pays for it. She goes through a breakdown, redemption takes place, the crazy bitch apologizes, the dumb blonde turns brunette and goes back home. Probably goes to rehab, then she's grounded at her family house. I point out in this episode the popular sugar baby for feminist empowerment. I complemented the photographs with a series of statements I posted on Facebook. These sentences were appropriated from the blogs and tumblers of real sugar babies. I only accept apologies in cash. Fun date idea. Go down on me while I shop online with your credit card. See how many things I can buy before you make me come. Being a former escort, I wanted to tackle this idea because as a feminist and as someone who believes in the rights for sex workers, notions of empowerment and victimization always seemed really misleading. I believe in equality and I don't stand for inverted sexism. Technologies of the self. I've always been interested in the pain inflicted on women's bodies, especially how it has always been taken for granted, from Brazilian wax to liposuction. That female me time filled with a sequence of little tortures. How would people, especially in an art audience, react to the female artist going under the knife? Better than I expected. The audience wanted more. The same as what happens with Amanda Bynes. Everyone seemed to be on the encouraging side. It was funny how believable the story became, taking into account the bad quality of the images. The picture of me in the gown was taken right after a visit to my Spanish gynecologist. The post-surgery photographs were all appropriated from different women. I supported the images with a surgery diary in the style of plastic surgery website realself.com, in which, unsurprisingly, the painful experiences are deeply infantilized, and the descriptions of post-surgical suffering are explained between lols and funny hashtags. I'd excuse myself from the sin of wanting to please by using the I do it for me argument, where me is imagined as a pure and precious inner space, untouched by external values and demands. But isn't this me overdetermined by a larger patriarchal structure that makes cosmetic treatments the only option for psychological survival in a world hostile to women's bodies? I kept on training and going to pole dancing lessons to make everything seem more realistic, uploaded videos to make the transition more credible, wore padded bras filled with socks to keep the fiction going. Normalization via coercion. When you repeat a lie, it becomes a truth, and a fake truth generated through images has more validity than a verbalized genuine truth. Images are more powerful than words. It is hard to escape from the cosmetic gaze. The trolling became more acute, and my fictional self was growing sadder with the time. She was just trying to be prettier and perform the social role assigned to her at birth as a cis female, but all she got was hate, so the meltdown took place. Crazy Bitch went to this black hole of depression, and her social interactions became weird with the time. The Crazy Bitch got hurt, the bitch interests no one no more. She gets to her lowest point, and the audience loves it. No one says anything. Tears and disappearance. The Crazy Bitch, the former hot babe, goes to rehab. The Crazy Bitch realizes about her mistakes. She's sorry. This was an analysis on the archetypes of female perfect behavior: calmness, virtue, discretion. The apology got 240 likes, and I received messages from people I haven't heard of in almost 5 years. People had been following in silence. I succeeded in providing the most entertaining content, another human sorrow. The third episode meant recovery. The hashtags were health, juices, interior design, yoga, simple, family. I posed with a random baby who said it was my cousin. Posted photographs of breakfast I've never eaten. The narrative hinted to various ideals of perfection and salvation. Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, Miranda Kerr Organic Cosmetics, Giselle Bundchen yoga selfies. My life had been normalized. I was now a brunette whose boob job had been concealed under a flowery Zara shirt. I went on holiday with my new boyfriend. I had been saved. Gaze as a cultural construction. How is a female artist supposed to look like? How is she supposed to behave? How do we consume images, and how do they consume us? Are we judgmental? Maybe, or not at all, or absolutely yes. All I know is that my words have less validity now, because even my own real body and voice can beat fabricated Photoshop images. We live in the electronic economy of looking good. We all know the prices of your artworks will exponentially grow in relation to your looks and the likes on your Facebook. But the good news are, if humans' perception are so malleable and the tools and distribution of media and images had not been decentralized, it's in everyone's hand to destroy archetypes. It's in our hands to bring the queer into mainstream narratives. If we can make our own porn, we can make our own romantic comedies too.
Thank you. Now, while we switch to the images, thank you. Reverse alphabetical order. So we're going to have Kevin Systrom, who's the co-founder and CEO of Instagram, speak a little bit about the power of it as an artistic medium.
Sure. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming. As someone who hasn't really been part of the art world, rather the technology world in Silicon Valley for the last 10 years, I feel like coming here to this place with everyone coming together, I learn a lot. So thank you, first off. I want to tell you about our mission. Our mission internally at the company, all 180 of us working in Silicon Valley, is to capture and share the world's moments. What we want to do every single day is create software and experiences that are magical, that allow you to capture the world and share it with the people you love most. whether that's your audience, whether those are your best friends, or whether that's a celebrity that you really want to follow on Instagram. Capturing and sharing the world's moments is our mission. And that was true ever since 4 years ago when we started. It was me and my co-founder Mike on a pier in San Francisco. Our idea was that we would take the fact that mobile phones were, fairly new to the world of having a camera in those cell phones as well, and figure out a way to change sharing forever. To go from a place where you would take a link online and simply post it out, and go to a place where you could share what you were doing, who you're with, sometimes what you're eating, through the lens of your camera. And we figured that out over the next 4 years up until today through this vision of capturing and sharing the world's moments. Internally, we have 3 really main values. The first is that we want to inspire creativity, and I think that that's one that really it maps back to what we're doing here today. Whether you are someone who is a paid artist, whether you're an amateur artist and photographer, whether you're a 15-year-old girl that just wants to see Taylor Swift perform, what we want to do is create experiences that inspire creativity in each of those ways. Inspiring creativity means creating filters, it means creating creative tools, but what it also means is allowing for you to discover the accounts that you want to follow most. And what we need to do internally is figure out how to unlock the 75 million plus photos posted every single day on Instagram by people just like you, and figure out how to make connections between those photos and the people that want to see them. The second value is that community comes first. So earlier today, people were asking how Instagram was different from every other social network and why we were here at Art Basel. And what I said was, Instagram is not an individualistic social network. It is a community network. So anyone in the world can create a photo sharing network. Anyone in the world can create filters. But not everyone can come together as one large community of 200 million plus people in the world capturing and sharing these moments every single day. And that's what's really special about Instagram. And our focus on community, we have an entire team within our team that focuses on community, that focuses on how people use Instagram in the art world, how people use Instagram in the fashion world, how people use it in the music world. All of these communities, these sub-communities, make up one larger community at Instagram. So community always comes first to us. We're not a technology company, we're a community company. And the last value is really simplicity. We believe that these devices that we all carry around now, that they force us to have more simple experiences, that they require us to. If we try to be too complex to too many people, we'll confuse them. So many of you will have noticed that Instagram remains fairly simple over the last 4 years, ever since you signed up. Maybe some of you have only used it for a month, maybe some of you signed up on the day we launched, but our goal was always simplicity. And with simplicity, there's this great book called Chaos, about chaos theory, and one of the rules that I learned about chaos theory is if you create really simple systems, you can have emergent behavior. And our goal was to create that simple system to have that emergent behavior. And what we see today is people using it in all sorts of ways. People use it to sell purses online, people use it to tell stories, people use it to capture their daily lives and share recipes. That simplicity is the key to Instagram's power. The last thing I guess I'll say is that whether you believe it or not, Instagram is not a photography company. A lot of people think of Instagram as just a photo sharing app. But when you step back, and by the way, I'm not talking about the fact that we support video and that you can take videos as well. I'm talking about the fact that Instagram is a communication company. Okay, if you go back to the earliest forms of communication, the pictographs on the side of cave walls, they were pictures. They were rudimentary pictures, but they were pictures. They were visual. It turns out that, like you said earlier, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if we can just figure out how to transform communication on Instagram through photographs, through videos, into messages encompassed in pixel data rather than textual data, you'll see that the earliest forms of communication still, they've evolved to today's means and technology. So we're able to take technology and communicate more efficiently today through an image than you can if you're sitting down and trying to type out a message. That's what's really special about Instagram to me personally, is the communication aspect. And the second you start thinking about Instagram as a communication platform, the world opens up. You understand why Instagram is so popular. You understand why people love Instagram so much. Because it's not just about taking a picture of your breakfast. It's about saying hi to mom. It's about connecting over the holidays. It's about seeing your friend on his journey across Europe in the summer. That's communication. It's not just photography. And that's what we work hard every single day on, to make sure that we can capture and share the world's moments.
Thank you. Simone DePury, the auctioneer and impresario.
Well, thank you, Bettina. It was fascinating to listen to what Kevin just said, because you said that one of the main goals initially was to inspire creativity. And I think if one thing is clear, it does, because every user of Instagram is basically an artist. So what has happened with Instagram is that every single person has become an artist. Every single person has become a photographer. Every single person has become an editor. And it's absolutely marvelous. And you now, as an editor of the largest kind of image visual network that exists in the world, you don't have to do anything. The content comes all by itself, and you have all these people like Klaus, like Hans Ulrich, and many friends who are spending part of the time to feed into this extraordinary new machine. Now, Hans Ulrich is the culprit in terms of my own addiction, because 2 years ago, Hans Ulrich is always miles ahead of everyone else, and he told me, you know, there's one amazing thing. It's Instagram. Remember that word. It's going to transform the world. And so I thought, well, if Hans Ulrich tells it, it's definitely true. So I immediately went into Instagram, not knowing that from that second on, I was totally addicted. So thank you, Hans Ulrich, for that. And then it was totally fascinating, because what I'm interested in is far beyond just art. I'm interested in visual culture. I'm interested in contemporary culture. So I'm at least as interested about music that I am about art, about architecture, about photography, about film, about cinema, about literature, about theater, about all of these things. And I hate all these artificial borders between these worlds, all these microcosms. The great thing with Instagram, it has brought down all of these walls. And I follow with equal pleasure, for instance, Snoop Dogg is one of my favorite Instagram heroes, because he must be very, very busy, because he posts more than anybody else I know. And it's always entertaining, it's always fun, it's always brilliant, it's great. So, or in the art world, of course, there are many artists that I love following. Richard Prince, temporarily, sadly, is no longer posting, but I think it was absolutely extraordinary how you could follow with Richard Prince his whole creative process, how he was working on new types of works, and you could see it on the Instagram, and you had to be fast because he would take it down again. So luckily you can photograph it and you can fix it. And I much prefer the fixed images to the moving images as far as Instagram is concerned, because we all have these fleeting moving lives. And so the wonderful thing is, if something is fixed, even if it's for a split second, that's why we love these fixed frames. Instagram has changed the way we look at things. First of all, we now see the world through square pictures. Before, I was looking at the world through rectangular frame. Now I look at it purely through a square thing. There is luckily in the iPhone this thing where you can do a square image. So you never ever do a rectangular image anymore, because I immediately think, can I post it or can I not post it? And then you think, you have different types of artists. Hans Ulrich is the ultimate consequential artist. because he is like Daniel Buren or On Cavara. He is sticking to one thing, and he's sticking brilliantly to that thing, because his posted stickers at a time when nobody writes anymore, nobody has any handwriting. Well, he is the single-handedly saving handwriting today, and he can demonstrate how beautiful it is. And also, in a purely visual world, he shows the power of the word. The power of the word visually expressed. And what I love when you look at Hans Ulrich or when you look at other artists is the actual grid, the total grid. I love looking at the individual images, but what I love is the image of the total grid. With Hans Ulrich, it's a very coherent grid. Klaus and I think we are more artists who have different kind of things we follow. Klaus has the windows, so we know now the view from his window in New York every minute of the day, every mood and all that, and so it's fascinating. I know immediately how Klaus feels like, even if I'm at the other side of the globe. And then he has different, so he has these sub-families, subgroups of works within his artistic Instagram oeuvre. I think that also I have these sub-families in that thing, and so I would like to do some suggestions, if I may, since we have the privilege of having the founder and CEO of Instagram here today. What I would love is to be able to regroup these individual families within the grid. And so if I go on Apple, and my apps, they keep moving, and you can rearrange the position of your apps, if it was possible to regroup our images, it would be fantastic, because then you can really fine-tune your artistic output like that. So that is, I think, a constructive, hopefully, suggestion to Kevin Seaster. My second suggestion, sorry, to take advantage of you being here, I want to see, because the great thing is about the likes. We are all obsessed with likes. Nobody dares to admit it, but we all want to be loved in this universe. And so we want to measure the likes. So I want to be able to know what is my most popular image ever. And I want to see what is my least image ever, least popular image ever. So I want to press a button where whoops, I immediately see from the most popular image down to the least popular image. So this is a different way of classifying it. And I think having it purely in the chronological way it is now is somewhat limiting. But I know that Instagram is just at its early stages, and all of this, I am sure, will happen in due course. But I would just like to finish and express to you our gratitude. And finally, I'd like just one last little word on what I love is people who have been able, thanks to Instagram, to show their artistic talents. I think each of us have discovered artists who we had never heard of, and we've discovered them purely because of Instagram. There is, for instance, a lady in London called Tanya Ling. If you go on her grid, I tell you, there's no person I know, no artist I know who has a more beautiful grid than Tanya Ling. Now, Tanya Ling, because of Instagram, was asked by a small gallery in London to do a show. She did a show with physical sculptures, with physical works and all of that. And Damien Hirst walked by and apparently bought most of the exhibition. So, just to show you, it's great when people like Tanya Ling, and I could give you a list of other people that I follow, who, thanks to Instagram, have gotten a voice and have been able to express themselves, and then the traditional world can latch on and recuperate it. That's it.
Touched upon some really important issues, particularly this idea of quantifying qualitative value and what it means that we're all obsessed with likes, and perhaps the potential dangers of that. And you also mentioned both Klaus and Hans Ulrich have different chapters in their projects. So maybe Hans Ulrich would like to talk about your handwriting project, and I think the clicker is right there.
Thank you so much, Bettina. And actually, yeah, as in a way you mentioned the handwriting thing. I mean, I must maybe start with the beginning. It's great that Kevin McGarry is here today, because we kind of started all with a breakfast we had with Kevin and Ryan Curating in Ryan's house in LA. And I kind of, previously a few weeks earlier, we had a conversation with Ryan and Klaus, and Ryan tried to sort of put Klaus on Instagram and sort of took Klaus's phone, and then a week later happened to me the same. So we had breakfast, and all of a sudden Ryan took my iPhone and downloaded the app, and before I even had noticed, he made a photograph and posted it to all his photos, and then so we joined Instagram. And I was completely lost. I didn't really know what to do. And then I kind of tried out all kinds of things, and if that works. I tried out all kinds of things. These are Simon's pictures, Simon. No, it's your turn, your pictures.
No, don't worry about the pictures. I think you should continue.
No, but I mean, it's your pictures. Because we didn't have the pictures for your presentation. So here are the portraits. Yeah, Simon mentioned this extraordinary series of portraits he does, so the idea of it being a portrait gallery. So that's what we saw before. Here the handwriting thing, so I then didn't know what to do, and in a way tried out all kinds of things, and then went on Christmas vacation with my friend Etel Adnan and with Simon Fatal, the two great artists and poets. And we had long conversations with Etel about Instagram. I explained to her what it was, and she talked about all her work in cartography, in drawing, in films, in leporellos, in notebooks, in novels, in paintings, in plays, in political journalism, in activism, in tapestries, in public art, in architecture and urbanism. She covers all of this. It's an incredible Gesamtkunstwerk. She's one of the great artists of our time. And so it then basically said a great thing could be, with Instagram, that you can actually, bring all these disciplines together, and that's really what sort of happens. I now follow people from all kinds of fields, and every day, gives me an insight into these different disciplines. We then, all of a sudden, were in a storm, an incredible rainstorm that happens in Normandy during Christmas, and we actually tried to find a cafe where we could, escape the rain, and all of a sudden Etel started to write a little poem on a piece of paper. And I think it was the most beautiful thing I had seen in many, many months, and it sort of triggered all kinds of thoughts. I all of a sudden remember the text Umberto Eco had actually written, where he said, handwriting is about to disappear, and obviously we need to think also with all the great opportunities and possibilities of technology what we might lose, and in a way protest against forgetting, as Eric Hobsbawm always said. So Eco said we need to bring handwriting back, and Etel said she would absolutely agree. So all of a sudden I posted Etel's poem, and I thought it could become a movement. We could somehow celebrate handwriting every day. So we then met with Kevin's colleague Mike, and here you have the definition really of the window. It is what Simon described, the square window of Instagram. And ever since it's been ongoing with practitioners from all kinds of disciplines. Here one of the most recent postings from the day before yesterday in London, Frank Ocean. Of course also Douglas Copeland's protest against too many selfies. Or more recently Tauber Auerbach. I mean, it's important, I think, what Simon said, that so many artists are doing amazing projects on Instagram. Tauber Auerbach, for example, her Instagram is one of the greatest Instagrams. It really gives us an insight in her mind, kind of her expansion of consciousness. She's researching. It's really the idea of the artist having a laboratory. Here, her idea of art as an entheogen. In a way, the same is true, of course, for many, many other practitioners. Here you have Fritz Haag and you have Steve McQueen. The idea also that we can basically, through David Archer in architecture, see every day into his notebook, the way he works, the way he thinks. Or here Rosemarie Trockel, she contradicted the next day what she said the day before. Or the most recent one, actually, from a few hours ago, the first without actually a text. It's the post-it flag which Alex Israel created here in Miami. In a way, I think Bettina mentioned the conference in LA, and Francis Stark, who is another amazing artist on Instagram. These are solo exhibitions, amazing solo exhibitions, where we can see every day how artists, add layers and layers. And I all urge you to follow Francis Stark. She doesn't have many followers, and I think it's really urgent, that her Instagram is seen. And as she said, in a way, it's not about followers. As she said, if Franz Kafka would write today, he might not have that many followers. But also, it's interesting that Francis said something very important about the river of images, that you actually actually take something out of this river and can then all of a sudden put it in a gallery or can put it in an exhibition, which is something which happens more and more now, that actually artists have these Instagrams and then translate it into shows, and it still contains meaning. It's not actually because it stops floating down that river. On the contrary, you actually in a way can bring that sort of life flow into the solidity. As she says, the artist creates solidity, makes sense of that flow of life in a way. And obviously what that means here is what Simon mentioned. You see the, the pattern of the thing, but what it means is that more and more it makes sense curatorially not only to curate group shows. I actually see the handwriting project as a kind of a curated group show, but also to curate solo shows, to invite artists to do big solo shows. So for example, on our Serpentine Instagram with Julia Payton-Jones and Jochen Foltz and also our digital curator Ben Vickers, we decided to give now every month the Instagram account to another artist. One of the first artists who took over is the great Carrie Wynne Evans, and he has an amazing archive of photos and developed a whole sequence of images, like his first big solo project on Instagram. A whole other thing is, of course, and that's something Simon also mentioned, this idea of discovering artists we might not necessarily know already, through exhibitions, and that might have many different reasons. One reason, of course, because it's very early in their trajectory, and that leads us to 89 Plus, where we developed with Simon Casse a long-term international multi-platform research. Amalia mentioned it in her speech, where we show artists doing innovative work born in or after 1989. It's basically a long-term project, over 10-20 years, with panels and books and periodicals, of course also Instagram. We have here Daria Bajacic, who took over for a week. Here again you have that takeover, you have the idea of solo shows, not only group shows, or Abdullah Al-Mutairi, who did it most recently. So in a way it has only just begun, and I think there's so many more possibilities. And I think later in the conversation it might be interesting to talk about all the panelists and all of your maybe unrealized projects on Instagram. Thank you.
Klaus?
Bettina, in the very beginning, said, oh, the three panelists are not saying a lot about, like Simon and Hans-Ulrich and I, we don't say a lot about our personal life. And I actually think I made this presentation fictitiously personal, which makes it really personal. And that's something that Instagram really strangely, it's not like you have a remote control and you switch your light on and garage door. It's literally that it functions the other way. It changes you and it changes your behavior, which is actually a really interesting phenomenon. So the fictitiously personal, really personal, I used to hate saying anything about my personal life. I really hated it. And perhaps one of the very few people who know about my personal life is you, Hans-Ulrich, because we know each other forever. And I used to have a completely empty apartment, and I always throw these parties with Doritos, and it's nothing but Doritos and empty apartment, so I can't really photograph my food. And I really couldn't photograph my furniture. And so I had this empty apartment. When I Googled my name, it didn't come up my name. It said by my name, apartment. So I felt I was stuck in it. And so, but parallel, when I got on Facebook, which I got really late, and when those little cameras came out that don't need paper, because I hate objects. I really hate objects for myself. I love art, but I hate objects. So I could make pictures without having them as an object, and I realized I actually disagree with Simon. We are not artists. Not every single person who Instagrams is an artist. I think every single person who uses Instagram communicates. And I think that's a huge difference. So I think we communicate a lot. And it was so interesting that your presentation felt like an auction, and your presentation felt like a very gentleman-like investigation what it is, and I'm like much more speculative. But so when my apartment was empty and overexposed, I photographed every morning out of my window, and these are the windows that I put on Facebook. And I think I started 2007. So, and sometimes there was a bridge on fire, or sometimes there was just a sunset. But this was a little bit out of default because there wasn't anything else. And then when Instagram started, and that's really embarrassing what I say, it's like really personal stupid. So I started like, oh, a selfie, what is a selfie? I knew it from like YouTube and stuff, and so I thought, oh, I'm shaving myself, that's a selfie, and that's kind of embarrassing, but I think Instagram is about embarrassment a bit, in a good way, or in a bad way. So when I went, nobody in Germany is on Instagram. It's like literally, perhaps a little different now, but nobody is. So I asked my dentist, can I take a selfie? And she said, what is it for? I said, for Instagram. She didn't know what it was. She said, fine. She's in the picture. That's an X-ray. And then what I think is really interesting, and I show you this very, very briefly, I think people are always the same when they are 10, when they are 15, when they're 25, when they're 50. They're always the same. For example, I lived between 16 and 20. I built my own greenhouse and had an experimental laboratory in it. So it was greenhouse, laboratory, and I lived with plants and I lived with birds. So I had an incubator. So I end up now, 400 years later, kind of in the same situation. And I actually built a greenhouse like this, like exactly the one I built as a kid in Berlin at KW. And it's a Dan Graham pavilion, but it totally looks like the greenhouse I built like with 16. So what I'm saying is, by this identification, it's an X-ray, that's a dentist, that's a selfie. I also think you reveal a lot about your past, because you go home and you photograph this greenhouse and you're home and you go through this funny suitcase where you have all your old pictures. And then I must have been, whatever. I put them and I do very fast. So that's the greenhouse and gone. I think, yeah. So, and then I go more into official situation. I actually think for 10 years I'm writing a little travel column because I traveled so much. And Hans-Ulrich and I started traveling so much in the early 90s. We were advising an institution in Japan and all of these things, but nobody traveled that much, and I think we overdid it. And then at some point a magazine came up like, you are really overdoing it. Don't you write a little bit whenever you travel? So I did this. I do this now forever. I think I do it once a month, and I did it like nearly 200 times now, so that's a lot of time, that's a lot of columns. And it reminded me that actually doing an Instagram is like a postcard. You were in Italy, you were in Brazil, but what if you could send 15 postcards a day? So it gets a little overboard. But it reminds me that great curators like, for example, Caspar Koenig, remember when, like in the 90s, they would send us postcards, so where they just were. So it's also a little bit of sharing. This is curator's card. This is Thelma Golden from the Studio Museum and I taking a selfie, and that was embarrassingly publicized in the New York Times. And then Hans-Ulrich and I in Central Park brutally early hike, because I have never time unless it's between 6 and 8, and you are the same. So, and that was a funny thing, because we walk and there is this jogger, and the jogger stops and sees Hans-Ulrich. Stop, I follow you on Instagram. And then Hans-Ulrich looks like crazy. Do you know the guy? I said, I don't know who that is. And then the jogger turns around. I follow you also on Instagram. And that's kind of really weird. So, chosen family, I say fictitiously or really personal. So I share my Instagram with chosen families that people are really unnerved by, and it's overexposed and people don't want to see it anymore, but still fun. So Marina is one of them. Marina Abramovich here was, after we had a selfie with Julia Peyton-Jones, her first selfie ever at the Serpentine Gallery. And here is a selfie with Lana Del Rey. And a dear, dear friend, Hur Al-Qasimi, who is the director of the Sharjah Foundation and the Sharjah Biennial, she said, stop it with these selfies. You are only allowed to do one of these selfies if it's in the museum. And I thought like, okay, so I have to redirect everything now in the museum. So this is actually my office, and there's a Joseph Beuys poster and a Tom Slaughter work behind. I'm speeding up. This is the other. Patti Smith is part of this chosen family, and James Franco is perhaps the most notorious one. We kind of share, exchange our Instagram accounts. I make all the pictures, he gets them. We did a birthday party for Marina. That's an overkill, 2 taboos, right, in one night. he got the good picture, gets 100,000 likes because he's like, whatever. And then I take the remaining image because anyway, nobody sees it. But I think it's interesting when it comes together. So I got obsessed a couple of years ago by the Rockaways. It's a 75-acre peninsula barrier reef. It's literally nature in front of on the Atlantic, and it's a barrier reef that breaks the waves in front of Manhattan, in front of JFK. And Patty and I are neighbors there, and we invite all these people that I just showed you there to be there very, very often, and they stay there. And it's just amazing to photograph. And we just moved there just before the hurricane. We had been playing there all the time, but then it became real. And this is my favorite motif, and I photographed it so often. We did an exhibition there, and when the New York Times did the first print, we gave them the first right of, I don't know how that's called, when you do an exclusive or so. And they wrote the heavily over-publicized exhibition in the Rockaways. And it was literally the first piece of press that was in, because it was all on Instagram. So Chosen Family has to go. I go back because I think what was the most interesting thing after the hurricane, we would, and Angela Goding, my colleague, is here, we would rally volunteers and donations and had a bus. We had to fill the bus in front of MoMA, so we would all go out there and do the rescue efforts. And that was solely, and you don't listen, please. It was solely organized through Twitter and Instagram, which is actually crazy because we had no other tool, and so, but that worked. And then we did a temporary museum there, which was like a geodesic dome. There was also uniquely kind of only Instagrammed / publicized. And then we did a festival there. And then my Chosen Family, they all had to show up and post and show up. So I took this with Lana. I took Lana and James, and I made this little photo story. And I cannot, you say Instagram is very simple. I cannot store a photograph, and I cannot change a photograph, and I cannot go it unless I post it on Instagram. So I used to post all of these things, and then in the evening you delete all of them. So I made poor Lana and James do this fictitious love story on the beach, and I said like, oh, closer, arm here, whatever. And then I was formatting them, and then crazy enough, they leaked, and they created that Instagram scandal, because all these images that they took for me, like being like herbs all over. So it was all fiction, it was not real. Here is the rescue efforts and some of the volunteers. Here's my dear friend Diana and Dorian. And all these rescue efforts ended up with this huge open air concert, a beautiful installation by Patti Smith, who is not on Instagram, but she's very willingly helping being photographed. And then we did this open air concert where we had 7,000 people, and that was pure activism. And I think that's a fascinating thing. You can really communicate. I heard then when you go to Russia, when you have more than 3,000 followers, you are considered a press outlet. And when we did then finally a New York One thing about our Rockaway rescue mission, the guy said, oh God, it's going to reach so many people. The average of 40,000 people will see this. And I didn't say it, but I know that all of our accounts, more people see it. So it's actually an incredible tool, which is a little scary because it's quite big, I think. So I recently ended up like I was as a kid in a house that survived the hurricane with plants and birds. Hans Ulrich and I did this crazy selfie with Terence Coe and the apple. And this is our board chair, the amazing Eggy Gant, President Emerita of MoMA. And that was an experiment when we had the printed Meta Artist Book Fair. It was the most beautiful crowd ever. We made a little bit of fool out of ourselves. And we asked everybody to put their hashtag and their handle. And then at some point, I think we overdid it, because the whole building was Instagramming and everybody was, it was literally at the same time digital and analog, and it was so much posted, which was quite amazing. And I kind of want to end it here because And that is kind of surprising because you might think Ebola or war is not a theme for Instagram, and it's just happy-go-lucky. I want to have that cake. I want to be on that beach, and it's actually not true. I think you can really also message something. And so we had Pussy Riot come to New York. They came last minute. They called me like a day before. They hate planning things in advance. Perhaps there's a reason for it, right? They pretty much observed. So we filled our oversold 500 people just by this Instagram post. And it's like really amazing. So it is a tool of artistic freedom. And then Hans-Ulrich and I, together with Julia Peyton-Jones, we really want to do an initiative against the neglect of something like Ebola. We are safe, we're here, it's dry, it's fun, we're in the art fair. But I think there are real topics out there. And I think I go back to this between document and fiction to the last, because this is, when I had the other apartment, it was empty, only a mattress, and I would photograph outside. Now my apartment is so small that the bed is in the window. It's kind of very funny. It's kind of literally in the window. I don't have to actually, but that means I have to make it before I take the picture, and that's the first thing I do every morning. So I wake up, so I have to make the bed, because otherwise you see the mess in the window. You see the mess in the picture, and you don't want that mess to be seen by everybody. So it's this routine, waking up, I have to clean it up, and then taking a picture, which actually is quite a beautiful Zen exercise. I think it changed my life. Super.
Klaus brings up an important point, the distinction between Instagram is something that turns everyone into an artist and using it as a tool for communication. David Robbins writes in High Entertainment that it fails as art because it's not trying to be art. And I think that's a really interesting question, especially during a week like this when people are posting images of a lot of art. And I think there's a difference between putting up a photo of art or, you know, what you're eating and using it as a medium to create art from the technology itself. And Amalia has really kind of demonstrated how by turning over your entire persona to your, to your Instagram account and to this conceptual art practice. And I wondered, just briefly before we kind of open it up to questions, if, also it's encouraged these tropes of how more and more people are performing their own lives and kind of the difference between at what point does that become art, and maybe if there are art historical precedents for that, if there's a way to kind of link this to a longer history.
Just to jump in, because Hans-Ulrich and I were debating whether I could take these pictures of the window, because first I said no, it's like art, but I think so many pioneers like On Kawara and so many, they kind of anticipate. I think Yoko Ono anticipated Twitter by her Grapefruit book in the 60s, writing short sentence under 140 characters that knock you out of your shoes in the best case. And so many artists kind of anticipated in the seriality, the fictitious, the road movie. I think all of these aspects, now we are just co-opting them after artists anticipated them for 40 years. And that's a liberating moment, I think, which is...
Well, that's a key moment, I think. Thanks. It's a key moment, this idea of artists anticipating things. I mean, thinking yesterday we were looking at the fair here at these extraordinary, books of K.A. Hardy, which are kind of fanzines she did years and years ago. It's another artist to urgently follow, on Instagram, K.A. Hardy. But she has anticipated many, many discussions happening now on Instagram and related to selfies, etc., for a long, long time, in her work. So one more example.
So I've just been advised we're almost out of time. It would be great to talk more about the dangers of quantifying qualitative value, but we won't do that. If anyone has a question, it would be great. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Right here.
Is there going to be an algorithm that can be applicable to image as there is for sound?
Sorry,
in terms of copyright.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Copyright. Hello?
Yeah, you're good.
Here.
All right, so YouTube has an algorithm that reads sound and relates it to authorship. Will there be such an algorithm for image?
So
Is that interesting?
I'll answer a slightly different question first, which is like who owns your photos when you put them on Instagram? You own your photos, and you always continue to. That's the biggest confusion that we have in the art world, is like, if I put this up, do I own it? And the answer is yes, you own it. The second is what you're asking specifically, like being able to detect photos that are someone else's and take them down automatically. We already have forms of that for other types of photos to make sure that like known bad photos in the world don't get reposted, but that's more about abuse, less about copyright. I think it's a really interesting idea. I just think we'd have to see like what types of abuse happen currently on the platform and make sure that it's safe.
It was.
I think
Go ahead,
Sarah had
Sarah.
a question in the front.
Kevin, in our conversation earlier today, you expressed how you are here to learn about this art world and it's a new world for you. And I'm just curious what you think of all of these different fascinating brains in the art world and how they're using your medium. And if you have any feedback about what you've heard today about how these individuals are utilizing Instagram.
Well, what I love is that no one up here is using it to take gorgeous photos that are finely curated and high resolution. This isn't about photography. And in fact, I want to bridge what you said and you said. I believe that everyone is an artist on Instagram in their own way. But what does art do? It communicates. It communicates an emotion. It communicates a thought, right? So in some ways, I think you're both saying exactly what I said before, which is that every single person that has one of these phones that has Instagram on it is able to communicate to the world. And in some ways, the intention is an expression of art, and in others, it's an expression of emotion or a thought. But what I love is that no one's using it to take beautiful sunsets particularly. It's just, hey, I want to show you a glimpse into what I'm seeing in the world, raw, uncut, unfiltered in some ways, right? Unproduced is the word. Authenticity is the center of Instagram, and each and every single.
But is that authenticity real?
Well, the authenticity that most people experience on Instagram is knowing that the person that took the photo is the person that's posting it. I think your project did the opposite, which is it points out and it highlights the authenticity of Instagram compared to, say, many other social networks or how people present themselves online today. That's all.
We have time for just one more here in the front. Oh, she's coming with a mic for you.
I'm coming. So in keeping in line with your goal to keep Instagram very simplistic in nature, how do you see it moving forward in the future in the very complex and fast-paced world of social media?
I love that you use the word simplistic because I did take art history throughout high school because I love pre-war art. And I once said, hey, that sculpture looks really simplistic. And my art teacher was like, do you mean simple or simplistic? And in some ways, simplistic implies a pejorative nature, that it's too simple. So the essence of your question remains in that word, which is, are we going to keep it simple and efficient and beautiful? Or are we going to stay behind in some way? Is it going to be too simple and not evolve enough? I think from my perspective, we are on the train and in the direction of keeping it simple while evolving it. I mean, I think the video offering on Instagram is fairly simple. It fits in the square. It doesn't require any new behavior, but it's extremely powerful. You see people doing performance art on it. You see people recording protests overseas in Hong Kong. You see the world through Instagram while remaining simple. So I think it's both, but simple is the answer, not simplistic.
Thank you all for coming. I'm sure we could continue this conversation on Twitter and Instagram, asking questions. I just want to also point out that our friends at Art Book DAP are here with books. Never leave an art fair without buying a book. Thank you.